coast, coast to coast. Compliance.
Hello and welcome to Coast Compliance. I'm Lou McCurry and welcome to our second episode. In order to cover the whole of Australia, of course, we need coverage on the West Coast as well as the East Coast. So with that, over on the West, we've got Beau Fall. Where do we find you today, Beau? What's new?
Hey Lou, so I'm Beau Fall. I'm a technology specialist based out of Perth in Western Australia. I've been playing way too much Destiny 2 over the course of the week on the Xbox. This is also going to be an Ignite special. So we're covering all of the news and everything coming out of Ignite and looking forward to that. And I'll hand back to you, Lou. What have you been up to?
Thanks, mate. Well, I'm also a technology specialist over here in Melbourne, Victoria. Look, I'm a lover of all things musical. And with that, Beau, what did you think of that intro music?
It's very you, Lou. I can say that perfectly fine.
Let's move on. All right, Beau, tell us what's coming up on the show, mate.
All right, so coming up on Coast to Coast this week, we're going to have a run through all of the compliance announcements that have recently come out at Ignite and what me and Lou are excited about, what's coming up. Like I spoke about last week, there have been a whole bunch of new announcements that have come out, so let's quickly dive in. Lou, did you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and you know what, I think with this, I might start with a bit of a tour of the Ignite site itself, because it's one of those things I find in previous years, we all get those emails and reminders to go off and visit Ignite and check out Ignite and register, et cetera, but I want to entice those of you who haven't yet done so to go and check it out. The interface is really quite helpful. You can see here on the screen that, you know, within Ignite itself, I've signed in as Lou, and that actually gives me the ability to do some pretty cool stuff. You know, there's an overwhelming amount of content. We're going to just touch on some of it today. But the first thing I'd be doing is having a look at the session scheduler.
You might need to share your screen there, Lou. I think you've not shared.
Oh, there you go. Let's press on, start sharing. And you should now be seeing my screen,
there
right?
we go. Perfect.
There you go. I've only been in this role for about 15 years and I'm still learning how to share my screen. So I'm adjusting to lockdown. Let's move on. So this is the Ignite website, as you can see, and coming up here, because I have signed in as Lou McCurry, I get access to some personalization. The first thing I'd recommend you do is check out the session scheduler. In the compliance space that Beau and I work in, you know, I'd want to be filtering out some of this content and really just look for probably the solution area in security here, blow that out, and let's just focus on the 18 sessions that are specific to compliance. It's a good starting point. I'm not suggesting you ignore the other content in here. It's amazing content, but in my case, I'm keen to check out some of these sessions. You might notice as well on the right-hand side, we've got the option to add or remove from backpack. I'm kind of building up my own little playlist. It's going to help me over time because there's so much content here. We're not going to be able to cover it all off or consume all of it at one sitting. So being able to come back, watch something, and then take that off my list just gives me a track of where I am and what I need to do. There's a very nice
with that as well, Lou. This morning you showed me a pretty good feature with the backpack. Do you want to run them through that? I know it saved me a whole bunch of time.
I love this. Here's my backpack. And you've got the option here to do a couple of things, either for yourself, but also for those of you who are sort of curating content for team members or other people. And that's one of the big challenges around Ignite and with all this information we get is just finding the right content and then making sure people are sort of targeting or looking at it. But once you've got your backpack and you built that out, download the backpack. What that's going to do is actually render this off as a Word document. You can see it's just dropped in here. And this becomes something you can either copy and paste or just send around as an attachment. But the nice thing about this, as you can see, is it's nicely formatted. You get all the session breakdowns here. Everything is hyperlinked beautifully as well. So there's the session, direct link. That's what it's about. Here are the resources as well as you need them. And you can run this multiple times, build up a separate set of curated content depending on who the audience is. So I often do this with customers as well. Just, pull out stuff that I think a customer might want to check out and just send that through as an attachment. Check out Ignite. Register, spend some time in there and take your time. It's not a race. It's not about getting through all the content as quick as possible. Do some just-in-time learning. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, I think it's important to note as well, now that the event's over, these are on-demand sessions, so you can go through and take them at your leisure, so you don't have to tackle them all in one night or try to get up at 2 a.m. to view some of those sessions. They're all there for you to jump in and learn from.
That's a great point. On-demand recorded sessions. All right, so let me take you for a bit of a grand tour of the sorts of things that that I found useful. I'm going to break my updates, and we'll throw to Beau for some of his highlights. But I'm going to focus on information protection, some stuff around compliance manager and communications compliance. So in the space or in the area of information protection, we've got some new trainable classifiers, built-in ones, and they cover the areas of finance, IT, tax, healthcare, and we've also got a bunch of new sensitive information types, 52 of them in fact. This has some real benefit, because what it means is with these new trainable classifiers, it means that you, the customer, doesn't need to be building them yourself. So the ability to detect business documents that relate to things like contracts and other, IT and tax documents or healthcare means you can jump into Content Explorer in the Compliance Center and do that discovery in a way that's really effective. So with zero work in terms of building policies, zero trainable classifiers, literally open the console up potentially for the first time, click through those trainable classifiers. Where are these sensitive documents right now? And use that to inform your policies that you're going to build out. And you can use these for retention labels as well as sensitive information labels, and also communications compliance, where you might want to use these trainable classifiers to monitor communications. Look, the other new thing, I sort of alluded to this, there are 52 new sensitive information types. This gives you the ability to pick up things like people's names or addresses or medical terms. We're not talking about specific names. We're literally saying, show me anywhere where we actually have people's first and surnames grouped together, or show me addresses out there, because that potentially might be a privacy concern, or might be something I need to manage using DLP, or maybe through auto labeling, or there's some information governance implications of that. So again, it's about being able to surface sensitive information without requiring you to go off and build a whole lot of policy or custom sensitive information types, just out of box stuff, which is really, really useful. So I think,
I think we get a lot of those requests from customers as well, right? We get requests for additional sensitive information types all the time. So we're constantly adding them. And I think we're getting close to 300 now. We wouldn't be far off.
Yeah. And of course, don't forget that even if you're seeing something we've produced that isn't quite what you're looking for, you can open them up now, or you can create a copy and then tweak them to your liking. So they're a great starting point regardless. Okay, next cab off the rank is Compliance Manager. We've got some new regulatory templates that are specific to Azure and Dynamics 365. So this is really handy. We care about this because the guidance that we provide here is much more specific to both of those solutions. So if you're a solution owner for Dynamics 365 and you've got some regulatory requirements, there's some very good guidance there within Compliance Manager, and a great way to manage your compliance. And lastly, let me just touch on communications compliance. If you haven't come across communications compliance, it's an interesting one. It's in that compliance suite. It's the ability to pick up on sentiment, the way I like to describe it. What's happening out there in regard to communications within the organization through Teams chats or emails, etc. And this all ties back to those sensitive information types, of course. Step one in all of this is, what is it that you consider sensitive? And then communications compliance lets you determine, is this sensitive information being discussed? Is it being exchanged between my people? And one of the new additions here is the ability to do what we call zero-day insights. Again, without having to build policy, it's the ability within communications compliance to surface up information in a nice consumable dashboard that says, here's what's going on in your organization. People are discussing, for argument's sake, COVID-19 vaccination rates and the vaccine mandate that your you're trying to encourage, or mandate's not encouraging, that you're requiring. So what's the sentiment out there in regards to the COVID-19 and your vaccine mandate and your proof of vaccine document handling? What's the sentiment out there? This doesn't give you policy. I mean, it doesn't enforce any policy. It surfaces information. It removes personally identifiable information as well. It should be really clear. It's not about identifying specific users, but it will inform you to then go off and build policy. Here's the problem. Here's the potential leakage. We need DLP policy, or we need some records management policy, retention policy, or we need some labeling policy. So the ability to manage that, we've got some great new DLP integration, new language support as well. So there is a lot of new stuff just in those three main areas there. But again, just the highlights for me. Beau, I know that there's a whole swag of stuff in there that you found interesting. What's on your plate?
Yeah, and I've got plenty to talk about here today as well. But I think on top of that communications compliance we were talking about before, and we'll probably have a future episode about it because there's a lot to cover, but we can also start using trainable classifiers to look for things like harassment of your employees and stuff like that as well. So it's a pretty powerful tool to start looking into some of that stuff, and we can build it up from there. But what I've been covering across for, I guess, on Ignite, I'm kind of really focused on things like DLP, the information governance side, some of the insider risk things. So I'll cover the things in there that I found fairly useful. One of the things for data loss prevention, at least, is now we put out a public preview for endpoint DLP in macOS. So this is out in public preview now. We can start using some of those detections, things getting copied across to USB, screenshots occurring, things like that, that typical DLP agent that we deploy on Windows devices can be picked up on. So that's out in public preview for macOS. So if you're interested in that, I jump out and have a try. We've also got additional policy enforcement controls based on things like file extensions and file types. So let's say we don't want doc files, for example. I don't know why you'd prevent that, but being shared externally at all. And if anything does, you want to get an alert for it. We can now specify those particular file types to get picked up when they're getting shared, and we can alert on those as well. There's a lot out for information governance, particularly as it is pertaining to Microsoft Teams. So we're able to create retention policies for private Teams channels. This was recently in public preview, and it's now been moved across to GA. We can configure a separate retention policy for the attached files that are now stored in SharePoint and OneDrive. We can also go ahead and even save the exact version of the file when it originally came in with the email. So let's say we've got a board paper or something that's been sent in to us via email. We've grabbed that. This automatically has put a retention policy on that. That users then copied that document and made another version of it. We have that original document in its original form retained, ready to go. So we can go back, we can use things like content search, e-discovery to pick up those original documents now as well. So if future edits have been made down the path, you've still got that original version of that document available to be picked up. Another thing that I'm particularly keen about is now that we've got the ability to, when we apply a sensitivity label to a document, we can also use that sensitivity label application to apply a associated retention label. So we can say, if this label or this file has got a, let's say, confidential sensitivity label tagged, give it a 7-year retention policy. We can do things like that when we're talking about things that may be highly confidential, let's say board papers or really privileged information. Maybe you want to kind of keep that forever. So instead of a user having to go through and or manually apply that, or having an automatic policy to search for that information, we have it as soon as we apply that sensitivity label, that associated retention policy is now applied to that document as well. And that just puts it against the users don't need to do that anymore. That onus is no longer on them. As far as they're concerned, if this document is confidential, we've applied that sensitivity label. Rest of the retention stuff's done in the back end. They don't have to worry about it. These same policies are also applicable to Outlook. So they aren't just for Teams. That can also be applied to Outlook events and things like that as well. And I guess the last thing that I like talking about, and I talk about it all the time, and Lou can vouch for it, is insider risk. So there's a whole bunch of new insider risk stuff coming out. We've done a macOS extension for insider risk, so we can start monitoring some of the Mac devices that come in. We've got a new healthcare specific playbook and an associated connector for that as well. So that can detect things like patient information, medical numbers, things like that that are being shared or maybe viewed inappropriately in insider risk. And I know from having worked in medical companies, hospitals and things like that, there might be someone famous that might have been in a car accident or something. And you'll have a whole bunch of people jump in and try to check that person's medical records or for news of that person or where they are. This can detect that, and then you can alert on that activity and bring it to the surface so that that activity can be stomped out really quick. We've also got Sentinel integration. So this has moved into public preview. So we can get all that telemetry that insider risk is picking up and correlating and feeding that straight into Sentinel as well, which is a massive step forward, particularly for people that have large Sentinel environments. And we're also introducing insider risk management analytics. So this has the system run a daily scan of your tenant audit logs. So this can pick up things like historical activity and other associated activities. And then it can use the insider risk management to identify any of those risks and kind of correlate that information out. And that'll be in public preview coming this March. We've also got a few things coming for advanced e-discovery and advanced audit. So we've got an additional things of audit events for things like Teams, Yammer, stream events. We've got the keyword query language editor that's been coming out. So that gives you a bit more flexibility in some of your searching. And we've got the large case management has now moved to GA. So that was previously in public preview. And that's where you can go through and do an e-discovery search on a larger amount of data. I think typically it's 200 gig for your normal search. This one goes up to a terabyte, I'm pretty sure. And we can do a full search on that data as well. There's also a whole bunch of stuff coming GA within insider risk that I'll briefly just mention here. So we've got browser file extraction detections across Edge and Chrome coming out. Device indicators is moving to GA over the next couple of weeks. The policy health and exporting alerts is coming out. And some of the advanced analytics and policy customization is also moving to GA. And that's over the next coming days or coming weeks. So you can have a look in some of the description below in this video, and we'll have a bunch of links and things associated to those as well.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, yeah, exactly. And with that, I'll hand over to Lou to touch on the toy box segment.
Thanks, Beau. I'm particularly excited about the Mac OS improvements because the ability to include Mac OS and those desktops in endpoint DLP and insider risk is massive, because that obviously was a bit of a gap there that needed plugging, and we've done so.
Yeah, it just gives that full holistic view, right? Like your whole enterprise can now get plugged into it instead of just the devices that we were supporting. So that's really good.
Beautiful. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I'm dipping into my toy box. Last episode, I showed you a drum machine, Beau.
You did?
Actually, I showed you a controller for virtual drum machines, right?
You did.
I've got a controller, a piano keyboard, if you like, that controls virtual keyboards as well. And back in the day again, I would be lusting over this keyboard that is the Roland Jupiter 8, and this is a remote desktop. I'm looking at my my other machine here. These knobs are all real. You're not hearing anything, of course, but this is a virtual representation of a real synthesizer, as used by Howard Jones, Tears for Fears, Duran Duran. I know we're going back a little bit, but some of those names might ring some bells. You have heard this synthesizer. I have no doubt everybody watching this, you will have heard this thing at some point in your life, okay? The reason I'm doing it virtually is because this is a synth from the 70s, and it's still out there. And that's what they cost now.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And as much as I really, really, really would like one, I don't want one that much. Because this is a reasonably old synthesizer, and of course there's going to be issues here with it's electronic and it's taken a while. So that's what's in my toy box. And what do you got for us, Beau?
All right, so I guess my toy box segment for this week or this session is, and I wanted to highlight this just before we start moving forward, is we're not going to have a physical toy every time we do it. I'm going to run out of toys. I don't have as many as Lou, but I think we can start recommending events that we've gone to, podcasts, things like that as well, and kind of build that out, things that we're interested in. And one of the things I did over the weekend is, and I'll share my screen just so that we're all across this. is I
It
went
says a
to
lot about
a
you, Beau. This explains a lot, by the way.
I know. I went to a mixed martial arts show in Perth. So it was at HBF Stadium, as you can see up there in the corner. So this is one of the feeder platforms into the UFC as well. So it was a really good fight card. They do events all over Australia. There's another one in Perth in February. I know there's one in Brisbane, I think, next month. But if you're interested in mixed martial arts and that's kind of something you want to go to, and there's not UFC events here super often, definitely go into this. The production value was really, really good. The fights were great. It's good music, good food. It was good all round. So that's my Toy Box share of the week.
Fantastic. All right. So with that, a big thank you to everyone watching. And again, we're hoping to do more. Well, we will be doing more. And Beau, maybe you can tell us a bit about the next episode.
Yeah, so next week we'll be covering a couple of topics. I particularly want to cover, I guess, a little bit more insider risk and communications compliance, and let's have a brief walkthrough for that. We've also got a guest lined up. I won't share them yet because they can be a surprise, but some of you would have spoken to her before. So stay tuned for that.
Fantastic. Yep, we want to bring as many of the compliance team into this as possible and broaden the scope. So with that,
build it out from there.
Yeah. See you all next time. Bye.
See you, everyone.
Two goes.